You know what one of my favorite, if not number one favorite part of horror is? Yup, you guessed it. The monsters. Even if the story is bad, the effects seem cheap, or the dialogue seems like it was read without any sense of how, real conversations work.
Do you like what you see?
I love what I see.
Would you like to touch what you see?
Yes, I would.
Would you like to go out with me?
Yes, I would.
Would you like to fuck me?
Bingo.
If a trailer teases any kind of monster in any kind of story, I'm game. Unfortunately, it has led me down the road of a lot of shitty movies, but sometimes it works out and I'm treated with a new or well thought out monster. Extra points for practical effects. Sweet Home has been on my radar for a while since I heard the words Korean horror TV show. I am always on the hunt for a good horror show, especially if it's an anthology, because it opens the opportunity for more monsters. I know Sweet Home isn't an anthology, but when I read the description of the show on Netflix and saw the word monsters, I was in. We really don't have enough good scary TV shows, at least in my opinion. You all know my thoughts on The Walking Dead, and it goes the same with the spin-offs.
At what point do I fall on the ground and cower like a child?
American Horror Story has more shit seasons than good ones, and it feels like the show focuses more on sex than actual horror. So let's dive into Sweet Home with high hopes, even though that's almost always a bad idea. The show starts off with what seems like a flash forward. A lone character walks through the snow, and with each step, a hibernating or dormant monster wakes up. And guys, we have practical effects.
Oh! Oh, yes!
So he's walking towards a military barricade, and they open fire because he won't stop moving. And I'm calling it right now, I predict this show will be awesome. This is my first review on a TV show, so I'll summarize the eps and talk about some highlights so the review isn't like 2 hours long.
Oh, thank you, Jesus.
Oh, actually, it wasn't me. It was...
No, it's okay. I'm used to it.
Episode 1 introduces the characters we are going to be following, and since I don't speak Korean, we're just going to talk about them by their personalities or characteristics or what they do. We have a suicidal gamer, a schoolgirl dancer, a bass player, a firefighter, a student, a professor, and a kind of thug gangster. They are all living in this big, shitty apartment building when weird stuff starts to happen, and one of the people turns into a monster and starts to eat her cat.
Good riddance.
And then she jumps out the window. The next morning, people are trying to leave, but the whole building is on lockdown and no one knows why. They figure out a way to open the doors, and we get our first monster with a giant liquor-type tongue. They manage to get it back outside and close the doors again, and the camera pans out to see dozens of different kinds of flesh-hungry monsters.
This just got awesome.
Our gamer opens the blinds in his place and gets a massive nosebleed. A security guard also got a nosebleed and started acting weird, but he wasn't the monster that ate the cat, so we don't know if he will turn yet. Episode 2 introduces us to more characters. We have a McGruber type.
Because the trunk is filled with over 75 pounds of homemade C4 explosive that I personally packed in there with my own two...
An asshole supermarket owner, and a couple others. By the way, in this apartment building, there's like a small supermarket and a daycare. I mean, there are like legit stores on the bottom floor. This episode shows the locational divide between our characters. Half of them are on the ground floor and refuse to leave for their apartments because they want to keep the safety in numbers rule, while the other half are trying to survive in their rooms and in the hallways and the stairwells because there are a few monsters in the building. Also, there are some divides in time, so it kind of time jumps and then it backtracks, and sometimes it is a little hard to follow. We still don't know how the disease or curse spreads. I mean, there is one person that gets bit and another person gets blood in their eyes, but they don't change, at least not yet, so a lot is really up in the air. This app also reveals that cutting off heads doesn't even kill the monsters, so our characters are pretty fucked. I really hope these things are killable, because if not, this show will constantly remind me of those kind of survival horror games, and I always prefer the ones where you can fight back as opposed to the ones where you just run and hide. I don't like passive, weak, incapable heroes, regardless of the genre or the medium. I also gotta point out that in every Korean horror I've seen, whether it's monsters, ghosts, serial killers, they always throw in a good amount of humor that always gets me to laugh. Unlike horrors that have too much humor that it takes the focus off the horror, like Us. I still get into fights about that movie. It was the biggest disappointment of the year for me. Episode 3 treats us to some characters dying.
Oh dear, there are so many people to thank. God, of course. And, who else? Oh, this is so unexpected. Oh yes, Satan.
We also get to see some of the monster fights, which is always fun. But we have heard Imagine Dragons Warrior once per episode, and it's getting really fucking old. The bulk of this episode is spent saving some kids, and their relationship really tugs on your heartstrings. We also see that some people have the monster disease and can either control it or don't mutate. I'm really not quite sure yet what it is. Episode 4 starts off with a military PSA stating that these things can only be killed before they are fully turned, which is a kind of silver lining, but that's like saying you have to eat a shit sandwich, but the silver lining is the bread is fresh. Also, the disease is based on desires, but it's really not super clear. We also get a lot of social, self-governing scenes where the two groups unite on the bottom floor, which is a given in movies like this, kind of like The Mist, except no one has turned into a psycho cult leading monster.
And it is his fault. Yes,
No!
it is your
No! It is not my fault!
You, they did it. They spit in the eye of the Almighty.
Yes, it is! No!
Episode 5 focuses more on the fear that more people are going to turn, but no one knows who or when, because we still don't know what desire makes people turn. We also get more backstory on our mysterious gangster, and why he's even in the building in the first place, because he doesn't live there. We also get more characters introduced, but we do get some deaths, which is great, because I can't keep track of any more at this point. Episode 6 is a bit of a fun one. We hear the rules the group has established. Our gamer has become the runner for everyone for supplies. The firefighter leaves the building successfully, but my favorite character gets infected, which made me curse at my TV. We also get another character death that didn't go down exactly as I predicted, but definitely saw coming next. We also get a good look at the speed demon, whose legs and ass cheeks look unclappable.
You would die.
That wasn't
Challenge accepted.
Episode 7 shows us that there are a shit ton more monsters in the building than just the spider and the runner, who seemed like the only two left for the last few eps. The monsters might be weak to fire, but it's not a for sure thing. It also seems like one got killed by the gamer's spear taser, so who the hell knows. But supplies are running low, and the group preps for a risky supply run out of the building. We also get treated to the reason behind the title of the show. This episode, for the most part, has a lot of coming together and character growth moments, which really tug at the heartstrings. We also get the backstory of our gamer. And now we have episode 8, When I Almost Lost Faith. Imagine Dragons Warrior plays for the 4th time. But the risky supply run goes tits up, but everything still worked out, oddly enough. Later we are saddened with a great character death, but we get another Imagine Dragons Warriors. 2 for 1, baby! Episode 9 introduces us to human villains. Pretty standard stuff in these kinds of stories. We get some more character deaths to spice things up, and our gamer isn't the only monster in control. But someone else got shot, and it seems like they skimmed over it, unless I missed it, and it was like the wheelchair guy. In episode 10, the military mass drops pamphlets that talk about a safety camp for people who report on special monsters like our gamer and his new buddy. I'm gonna call him the Duster.
Guys, I got some news, some terrible news. We got a huge problem.
Can we stop for a second and talk about this?
Okay, anyone with a brain knows this pamphlet is bullshit, but we got a lot of stupid people in the group. And with the death of a friendly monster, the gamer isn't so sure if he trusts the group anymore. And the Duster is starting to lose patience, and he just starts to waste the group. The guy has all kinds of powers, but the gamer's awesome special powers finally kick in. But winter has come with the military. They take away the survivors, and the show ends with a twist that I think can mean more than one outcome. I was a bit confused. So, what's the verdict? Well, let me put it this way. If we get more seasons of The Walking Dead and their 2 spin-offs, and Sweet Home doesn't get a second season, then I have lost all faith that the masses want higher quality entertainment. Now, some of the show is dumb fun, but the character interactions and growth really hit on a personal level. The monsters sometimes seem like practical effects, but sometimes they're kind of a cartoony CGI when they're more monster-like, but the fact that they are literally unkillable unless by fire really emphasizes how much of a threat they are. There are plenty, sometimes too many characters that are very interesting and unique, like the wheelchair guy who acts like the shop guy from Resident Evil 4.
Got something that might interest you.
One gripe I do have is that he does upgrade our base girl's weapon, which is like a metal bat, by sticking some ice skate blades to it, but we never get to see her use it. The Christian samurai professor is a nice addition. His presence reminds me of the Catholic priest in The Wailing, which is a great Korean horror movie, by the way. But at first thought, you don't think they would fit in the story, but they managed to, and it's great. The old man with the personal nurse and the gangster are all great and they feel unique. There are some traditional characters like the cynic that always knows best, the greedy self-serving guy with the wife he abuses, the guy who is all talk but no walk, some cowards that do some stupid shit, there's a badass. But even though we have seen characters like this before in similar scenarios, Sweet Home makes them all fit together. I can't recall ever hating a certain character when they were on the screen for too long. Even the schoolgirl dancer becomes kind of the psycho bitch of the group, and I love how the bass girl, who is my favorite character, calls her out on it like it's nothing special and she just doesn't give a shit. Some flat-out flaws that made my head spin was time, as in there was never a sense of time given, like days or even weeks could have passed, but we never get a good feel on how long they've actually been on lockdown. Also, the gamer who is kind of our main guy has flashbacks on his tragic backstory, but he has flashbacks where he imagines what happened and then flashbacks on the same scenarios, but now he's in them and interacting. So, like, was he there or was he not there? I think he was, but I could be wrong. Also, since there are so many characters, it's hard to keep track or even remember that there were more people than just the ones who had dialogue. I had to rewatch some scenes to figure out who got shot in some scenes, and I kept saying, who the hell is that? It made sense that those characters didn't get any morning scenes because they just didn't matter. Okay, so let's talk about the curse and why our gamer is so special. At a certain time of infection, a person essentially looks at their inner demon and tells them what they want. And this has some cool outcomes like the really buff monster, some weird outcomes like the spider. I mean, was that really his desire? Did he really want to be a spider? And it also leads to some funny outcomes, like the guy who wore a toupee became a hair monster, which is, I guess, as good of an origin story that we're gonna get for Cousin It.
Oh, by all means, they're clients, Mark.
But I guess our gamer doesn't actually give an answer, which is the secret to keeping the monster form like at bay. So overall, I really enjoyed this show. Most Korean things I've seen, like The Wailing, Gonjiam Haunted Asylum, Train to Busan, and even Parasite, which isn't a horror, have not disappointed, and neither does Sweet Home. And keep in mind, there are plenty of flaws. I'm not saying this show is perfect or a 10 out of 10. We all know what show deserves that title.
Franklin, you have to convince yourself the line is not in the room. When it is, I assure you, you will know.
But remember, the best way to watch a show like this is subbed, never dubbed. Thanks for watching. Stay spooky.